p.m. I will call to order the July 16th meeting of the Columbia Borough Planning Commission. Could we please stand for a moment of silence? Pledge to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I would note that the agenda for this meeting was published on the borough website in the time required. I would also note that the work session that should have been held prior to this at 6 o'clock was canceled this evening. At this point, the short-term residential ordinance, which we were working on last month, is in the hands of the solicitor, Evan Gable, for review, and we will have that for the August meeting. So we will continue work on that at the next meeting. And as to the approval of minutes, at this time, I will request approval of the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting. I would defer the workshop minutes until August, when the workshop is in session. So at this time, I would look for a motion regarding the Planning Commission meeting minutes from the June 18th meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Tiffany. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Marilyn. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, with regard to last month's meeting, we reviewed an application that was going to the zoning hearing board at the end of June for 336 Poplar Street for a continuation of a special exception for the use of that property, this time as a warehousing facility. We made no recommendation to the zoning hearing board on that. I attended the meeting. The meeting was continued to July 31st. I will not be able to attend that meeting as a planning commission representative. And at this time, I would ask if anyone is available for July 31st to attend that meeting to represent the planning commission. You would be noted as representing the planning commission. And at some point, it would simply be to remark that we did not have sufficient information to make any sort of recommendation with regard to the request for the zoning exception variance. I'm not sure which it was they were asking for. And if not, I will simply advise that there will be no representative there, but that we have no recommendation. So would anyone be available to represent us at that time?
Yeah, I can. When is it, 7?
It's at 7 o'clock on the 31st. And there was not, I'm not going into how the hearings went, but it did not go well. Okay, so it was continued. I'll give you a heads up.
Is that why you're not going back?
I will be in Ocean City, New Jersey, which I think is a better place. Okay. All right, moving on. This evening we have before us an application for a review of plans for 750 South 9th Street for a conditional use of a flexible residential development provisions of the zoning ordinance. Derek, do you want to give us any kind of lead-in on this, and then I will call on the principals to present?
Sure. So I know we haven't had many of these, but since the applicant is pursuing approval of this use under the flexible residential development area of our zoning ordinance, that approval needs to come from council. So your action tonight is to review the kind of merits of the sketch plan. We've already gone through a review of the zoning ordinance here at staff level, and this goes back to when Mark was still here, and we've had multiple meetings with the applicant to review those provisions of the zoning ordinance. So basically, your act tonight is to hear the application and make a recommendation to council as to whether or not the conditional use should be approved or not. There is some flexibility within the zoning ordinance to say, you know what, if we just don't like this or don't think it fits the neighborhood, you can state that. There are also some more dimensional requirements, and those they're bound by. I can say that they've met all those dimensional requirements. So process is if this would pass through council, which I would imagine that would be on thinking in August. I'm not sure if we're going to hit the second meeting in July or if this will be the first meeting in August that we go. We'll have to figure that internally. But if it gets through council, the next step would be for the applicant to submit a land development plan, and then this would kind of reset it back to the normal process that the planning commission is used to. We'll do a review, go through technical stormwater and grading and all that other fun stuff. So tonight's really a presentation on the plan itself, and again, feel free to be a planning commission and speak freely on what you think.
I think our less flexible residential was the Habitat homes there on South Fifth Street.
That's correct.
Is that?
Yep.
When I was in the other day talking to Paul, I couldn't remember her name. That was a flexible residential.
So, you guys want to go ahead and present the
Okay.
plan?
You could introduce yourselves.
Sure. Good evening, formally. My name is Tom Fanning. I'm an attorney from Goodley, Divler, and Fanning in New Holland. And I've been working with my client, Eli King, who is the sole member of a company called Valley View Capital. They actually purchased this property, you may know or may remember, from the borough back in March of 2023. And has been working, as Derek mentioned, with the borough on some plans to come up with it. So excited to finally have something to present to you this evening. With us also is Tim Fink. So Tim is from Landworks Civil Design. Tim and his partner Josh, Eli, and I, as Derek alluded to, have worked together to come up with this plan. So we're here this evening to present to you and of course just answer any questions that you might have. So as you know, in the zoning ordinance for the medium density residential district, that flexible development option is available as a conditional use. And there's about 25 requirements in the zoning ordinance in order for council to grant that use. So we've set forth those requirements, gone through each of them individually. I won't belabor tonight going through all of them that I went through in the application unless the commission would like me to. But what I'd suggest is I'd like to highlight some of them, especially from a big picture standpoint, and then ask for Tim to go over some of the land development requirements specifically as they are required by the zoning ordinance without getting into the saldo. Because as Derek said, we put a lot of thought into those, and those things are planned, and that land development plan is ready to go once we get approval, hopefully from Borough Council, but we don't want to put the cart before the horse. So if you wouldn't mind flipping to, on the application, there were exhibits. Drawings. If you flip to the photos, please, I think it might be most helpful to refer to those to start out with while I talk about the project as a whole, and then probably a plot plan when Tim talks about some of the land development issues. So, as we mentioned, we're here this evening to discuss a conditional use via section 22027 of the ordinance. As depicted on the renderings, what Mr. King hopes to do is to build 9 townhomes on the property. And those townhomes would be in 2 separate buildings, so 5 units in one, 4 units in the other. The ordinance via section 22027F1 would allow up to 13, so we're 4 units below what the maximum would be for that lot size, 0.474 acres. But in order to leave some green space, leave all the room for parking, and to allow for nice sized townhomes, then Eli chose to request 9 units. They average about 1,500 square feet, which is very similar to other residences in the neighborhood there. Of course, they'll be nice and new and modern. They'll have an open floor concept, living, kitchen, dining area on the first floor, and then all be either 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. They're proposed to be 2 stories each. They will be separated by 10 feet, so section 22027F6 of the ordinance requires them to be separated by at least 5 feet. We put a little bit more area in the middle there just for some more green space, and it also helps out with land development and stormwater as well. Section 22027F3 of the ordinance requires that there be at least 200 square feet of outdoor private areas. So kind of again, just touching on big picture items and how the whole field of the project is supposed to work. Be allowed for at least 220 square feet of private screened area for each of these. So off of the back of each unit towards the parking lot, there's a patio together with some dedicated private green space for each of the units. And then fences are contemplated that would kind of extend from the common walls to provide for some screened area back there. And then similarly, if you're looking at a rendering of the front of the building, you'll see that there's also some private screen porches that are screened on 3 sides as well.
Could you clarify for me that the front of these is Avenue X and the rear is parking?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted,
Yep, that's
thank
correct.
you.
Yep, with the parking accessed off of South Pine Street. Yeah, I'll let Tim talk a little bit more about that layout. And maybe we finally just to touch on a little bit more on the buildings themselves. Section 22027G2, I think is probably one of those requirements that Derek alluded to that's a little bit more subjective. That requires that the character and the design and the size of units, of course, be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. So we hope it's evident that that's something that Eli has put a lot of thought into. As I mentioned, they're 2-story units, about 1,500 square feet, which is very similar to what else we have in the neighborhood. The exterior siding color was specifically chosen to be compatible and consistent with what else you see in the neighborhood. So other than brick, most of the siding options that you see out there are some kind of simply white or brown or tan as we've designed here. Regarding the character of the unit, you certainly put a lot of thought into, if you take a look at the front of them along Avenue X, the drawing there, it's not just kind of a straight across cookie cutter building. There's some architectural interest to it, differing roof lines, and then as you notice, the paint colors are even contemplated to alternate. So the idea there is that they look more like distinct individual units rather than just kind of one long cookie cutter color. So with that, a little bit of overview on the buildings itself, and then touching on those ordinance requirements. Tim, if you'd like, I'll let you touch on some of the plot plan subdivision and all that.
Hello all, as Tom said, I'm Tim Fink with Langworth Civil Design. Working on civil aspects of this project, layout, grading, stormwater, things like that. As you described, we got 9 units. The front of them will be facing Avenue X, sidewalk from each unit out to the road. Both the sidewalk along both Avenue X and South 9th Street. There's none out there in the immediate vicinity. This is a start. I understand the borough is doing revitalization here and there, trying to get the sidewalks built or refurbished, what have you in the area. So it'd be a great start for us. Also, in the long-term planning across the street, there's somewhat of an industrial park plan, possibly many acres out. It's a great place, and maybe become rentals for people live there at that time. very high level terms. We saw a driveway plan that's very close to ours across there, so just general planning that that's working on. You know, as Tom also said, we're almost nearly compliant with the zoning ordinance, and this isn't quite the zoning review at this time. I'll touch on the issue with the trees in a little bit. We're nearly right on some of our setbacks. They're very small in this zoning district, but we are compliant with them, compliant with coverage, parking, just about everything that's in there. We have a dumpster to serve everybody down in the parking lot. That's going to be easily accessible for dump truck to come in, get out, not interfere with anybody. Meeting pervious vegetation requirements for the lots as a whole. Then to touch on the street trees, that would be a potential zoning variance that we would see in the future. They require 40 street tree per 40 feet of length of street. Whoever length this out, there's quite a bit of room for all that. We put 5 trees in where we can. They're close to 2 different intersections, one that's existing, using Matthew-X and South 9th Street, and the proposed driveway, so we're going to make sure sight lines are clear in there. Work that out. As this moves forward, if we get approval on exactly what the borough would like to see there. That's everything I would say. Are there any questions at this time?
Okay, the other waiver you're requesting is under 220-27E2.
Oh, yes, correct.
And that has to do with each dwelling unit being on its own fee simple lot would be a condominium ownership. So as I'm reading this, then this would be maintained as a single owner property out there with these dwellings being leased.
Correct. And UI can speak to that
That's-
very, a little bit more detail than I can. That is correct.
Okay, yeah, those were the two things I saw as waivers were the trees and that requirement for the fee simple lot for condominium ownership. So,
Yeah, I'll be happy to touch on that a little bit too. So of course you're correct. The 2 waivers in